Not yet. Hold up.
I'm Sarah Storr.
Steps forward, come on.
Now we're live.
Right. Thank you all for coming. I'm Sarah Storr, Robo Jackets Outreach Project Manager, and this is Walton Team 2974. They're here to present to you how to write a Chairman's Award submission. So if you're looking to get better at writing your Chairman's Award, they're the people to talk to because we've done it before. So pretty cool. Yeah, but thank you all for being here. We have one more after this, and it'll be Strategy and Scouting, November 19th, same time, same place. Grady will be presenting, so it'll be cool. But in the meantime, give a round of applause for Walton.
Hi, I'm Arya, the Assistant Communications Director at Walton Waters.
Hi, I'm Maggie. I'm the Assistant Executive Director.
Hi, I'm Kiai. I'm the Executive Director. And today we're going to talk about how to write a chairman's presentation. Your team, your story. So here is the general agenda for today. We're going to talk about these 5 sections. These are the 5 sections that compose the whole chairman's submission process. So let's start going over that. So in front of you, you have a packet, and in the packet you will find worksheets that correspond to each of the sections. Now, you'll be actually able to write for the first section, complete the first section tonight. But the rest of them, take this packet back with you, and you'll be able to complete it while you're writing the short stories and when you actually start the process. And you'll see why in just a minute. Anyone watching the live stream, these materials will be available to you online, but for now you can just get out a piece of paper and follow along for the first section. Okay. So let's start with picking a theme. Having a theme in your presentation is very important because it pulls all of your ideas together and also makes your essays and presentation cohesive. So here's a general process that you can go through. Of course, you don't have to go through this step by step, but this is a good place to start. So this will be question number 1 on your packet with the first worksheet. For this question, you want to write down just what you do, what makes you unique. Like, for example, when you're at a competition with, let's say, 30 other teams, what is something that your team does that we don't find too often with the other teams? Something that you have, maybe, let's say, a product or a program that's unique to you and you. So take a few seconds and write that down. Seems like everyone has something now. For the second question, so how have you helped other first teams? FIRST is more than just building robots, as we all know. They want to see how you've made an impact in your community or how you've helped other first teams grow. So any programs that you have that you can, let's say, invite other teams to your build space, maybe build together, collaborate together, think of some ideas, or just lending out some tools to other teams, maybe even mentorship if you mentor teams that are FTC teams or FL teams, anything applies. So think of some of the things that your team does and take a few seconds to write that down. Okay. Question 3. So how would you describe your team? What are some of the characteristics? For this question, feel free to write down some adjectives that could adequately describe you, or even answer, some other questions like how many students are on your team? How much time does your team spend? Let's say, if you guys are very committed and you frequently have meetings, or are you guys very because outreach and lots so are very helpful. So any adjectives that you could possibly use later on in your presentation or essays. Okay. So judges love seeing, what you do and how much time you spend doing them, and all of the impact that you've created in your community. But they also love seeing how you know that information. How do you track it? For example, our team uses an app called T-Sheets. Every member on our team has this app in their phone, or they can even access it on their computer. And every time they're at a meeting or they're at an event, or doing anything robotics related, even something at home, they can just go to the app or our own website and clock in. There is a timesheet where they can write down what they're doing. Once they clock in, you do the event, and then after you're done, you just have to clock out, and it stores all the information for you. And then the team coach can go back and look at, which students are participating more, or which events, take up the most time, where can be cut down on time, where do we need to spend more time, and things like that. So if you track any of your activities or hours or statistics like that, think of some of those things and make note. So now that we've brainstormed through those few things like, what you do, maybe how you track information, look at what you have and see what you do best. You always want to highlight a few things in your essays and your presentation. Because the judges have very limited time to read over everything, or, they have lots of presentations to watch. So you want to make sure that you have a few things that the judges remember distinctly about your team. So what are a few of the things that make you stand out? Go ahead and take note of those in my case. So you want to go ahead and kind of lay out your topics in order and see if you can find a flow between them. Don't just skip around from outreach to engineering and back to outreach. You want to create a flow that's easy for the judges or anyone else to follow. And kind of put your topics in order. And then you want to check to see if you have any common threads. For example, if you do lots of outreach, are you a very prominent team in the community? Do you like to help and mentor younger teams like FL teams? Anything like that. So find some threads, and these threads will eventually help you combine. They will combine and form. So this is where everything kind of comes together. So now you want to make the theme vague enough that you can apply it to all aspects of the team, because all teams do multiple things. Of course, build a robot, and then most teams even participate in outreach or have other programs that aren't just directly related to the robot or engineering, which is of course great. You should definitely do that. So does your theme allow you to connect it to all of the aspects? your theme is your theme. It is unique to your team and your team only. So does your theme embody your organization? You want to make sure that that you can apply every aspect of your team to your theme. But then don't make it too vague that any team is going to use it. Because of course, lots of teams do different things. And there is no other team out there that does exactly what you do. So that concludes the section for picking your theme. I'd like to stop and take a few questions if you have any. Well, if you have any, just make sure to write them down and include them on later section or next time we stop for questions. Okay, so let's.
Can you share some of the interesting themes you've seen?
Some of the ones that we've seen are just like an example for our team. Last year we did create, innovate, and inspire because we saw that all of the activities and events that we did, we either created something, for example, our product line, to make community outreach a lot more effective. We inspired lots of people. We constantly hear like, oh, okay, like this is such a cool idea, Walton. We want to incorporate this into our team as well, and innovate. We feel like we innovated lots of things and ideas. So that's what our theme was last year. And then 2 years ago, our theme was We Are First, which is an acronym that stood for We Are Fearless, Inspired, Role Models, Selfless, and Tomorrow. Okay, so let's move on to the essays. So the essays are, of course, a huge component of the submission process, aside from the presentation. There will be short and long essays. So let's jump right in. So the short essays, there are 12 to 13. If you're a team that's older than 5 years, so we'll probably have an additional question. That's just for teams over 5 years, like I said. These are really short because they only allow you 500 characters. Now trust me, that is not a lot. That's only 2 to 3 sentences at the most. So they're pretty short. The long essays, on the other hand, allow you 10,000 characters. So they give you a lot more space to write, and that's kind of where you really share your story, where you can write down little anecdotes and give examples about what you do. But for the short stories, for the short essays, you definitely want to stick to the facts. So here are some examples from last year, like the short essay. Briefly describe the impact of the first program on teen participants with special emphasis on the 2015-16 year and the preceding 2 to 5 years. So for this one, we could write about, personally for our team, we could write about scholarships, any of the scholarships that our now alumni have acquired through FIRST. It's definitely impacted them, and we've had many alumni gather scholarships. So that is something that we could write down. Of course, your response may be different. The long essay is much more general. It allows you a lot more space to kind of branch out. That's where you would use your theme, of course, and we'll get to that. But the short essays, most of them are very specific. So when you write them, you want to make sure that you are really answering the question and hitting it home. So some general key points that you want to keep in mind of when writing either the short or long essays. When you start the whole collaboration and brainstorming process, make sure to brainstorm, if not your whole team, at least representatives from each section of your team. Maybe gather a few engineers, gather a few people who do business or outreach, and then sit down and think of, okay, what are some of the things that we can write for these questions and everything like that, so you can get all ideas. Definitely track your content. In the additional resources page, there is a chart that you can write down the topics of what you can, include in your presentation. And then for the short stories, you can write down which number will you go under, and for the long essays, you can write a yes or no if you want to include it or not. Definitely check the awards first manual, because that is where you'll find the essay prompts, and that's where they write what they want you to write about in your essays. So definitely check that out before you start writing. Once you have written all your essays, it's a good idea to check them and have other people go over them and make some changes. But try not to go to your English teacher. Now, we only say that is because in English class we write very differently. Maybe our language is a bit more floral, and we use like rhetoric and things like that. But the writing style for these essays are going to be very technical and to the point. You don't want to use big words because essentially the judges have limited time to read these, so you want them to, understand as much as what you've written as they can, with the limited time the judges have to read. Have a few people initially start writing them, and then collaborate together as a group. So once you get all your ideas, pick a few people from your group who are inclined at writing these essays, and let them have a go. And once they have like a rough draft, then get together again as a group and go through it and fine-tune sentences and words and anything else. One important thing that you'll have to keep in mind, not only for the essays, but even for the presentation and pretty much throughout this whole process, is you're going to have to make some tough choices. Because every team has lots and lots of components. You guys probably do lots of things, but unfortunately, you can't include everything you do, because that would just overwhelm the judges, and again, you want to highlight the things that you picked out through your brainstorming process that you want the judges to keep in mind. So you don't want to bombard them with information, so they don't feel so overwhelmed. So you will have to make some tough choices along the way. Like, okay, which one shows that we made a bigger impact, this event or this event? For this section, you won't really be able to write much down because, of course, this will be a lot more applicable when you start the whole process of writing your essays. But if you have little notes, feel free to just jot them down while I'm talking. So what are some of the major events and programs of the year for the last 5 years? They love to see continuity. They like to see if you have started a program 2 or 3 years ago and kept it going, or how you even expanded that program. So, for example, our DE program is, I'd say, about 5 to 6 years old. And then that's how we could, write about it. So we started off, and then, we expanded it, and now there are more DE sites in the country, and things like that. So, definitely continuity, big thing that the judges love to see. For the short stories, from anything that you brainstormed or the topics that you want to include in your essays, which example will be best for which short story? Look over all the prompts of the short stories before you start writing them, so then that way you can, check off, okay, this event goes here, this will, be best over here for the short essays. You want to pick the best example, and that example should adequately answer whatever the question is asking. So you're given 500 characters. You probably want to use as much space as you can, but definitely don't go over because you don't want to be cut off. But always keep in mind, in those 500 characters, have you written as much as what you could have written? And if you feel that the sentences jump around too much from one topic to the next, how can you kind of make them more cohesive or more about the same subject? For example, if a question asks something about outreach, you may even want to talk about one of your outreach programs and then include something that you've done that requires outreach and engineering. But maybe if it feels like it's too much information, I'd probably just stick with the example of the first outreach program that you had in mind. Whatever really answers the question the best, kind of your strongest answer, is what you would go with. You want to organize your long essay because you've been given 10,000 characters, And you want to make sure that you organize it so it's really easy to follow and it doesn't get so confusing. So I would definitely recommend breaking up the long essay into subsections and even giving the subsections a title. For example, last year our theme, as I said, was create, innovate, and inspire. So we broke up the long essay into 3 main sections: create, innovate, and inspire. And wrote what part of the theme goes with like what events and what we did and how we created this, how we use this to inspire people and something like that. So this is where you really want to take advantage of the theme and allow it to help you organize your essay. So remember the stuff that you highlighted in the last section, the few things that you do really well? Well, we want to bring them back now. So in the content of each section or each short essay, highlight these events or programs or whatever that you picked. You want to really hit these home and make these apparent to the judges. So this is a way of them remembering. You want to make sure that what you're writing is relevant to what the question is asking, especially, of course, for the short essays. So once you've written everything and have a first draft, you want multiple people to look it over it yourself and think, okay, so is this the best example I can include for this short essay? And if not, you may even have to include another example. And oftentimes, we may have 4 to 5 different trials or times where you have to rewrite the whole short essay until we're finally happy with the one that really answers the question. So what are some of the things that you want the judges to remember in your essays? This is where you're going to have to make tough choices. If the question asks, how have you impacted say the younger generation or younger students, then definitely talk about if you've helped any FLL teams or if you've had any outreach events that center around elementary to middle school aged students and anything like that. So that would be the perfect example to use instead of anything else. For example, if your team does like Day of Code at a local elementary school, that would be a perfect thing to write. Okay, so that concludes the section for the essays. So, anyone have any questions? Okay, so let's move on to the presentation, which I think is about.
So the next step in the chairman's submission process is actually writing the presentation that you will give to the judges in the room. While writing the presentation, it's important that you remember that you only have 5 to 7 minutes. So make sure you write the presentation to fit into that time frame. Here's the general process that we use when we write our presentation. You don't have to use this process exactly, but it's a great starting point for you to make it unique and make it yours. So if we look back at what the worksheet that we did for the theme, you probably have a good sense of what your theme is. This is important in your presentation. Presentation is where you bring your theme to life. So you show the judges how happy you are and that your team is really awesome. When writing a presentation, it's important to think about what kind of format you want. There are lots of different ways you could do this. The most common type, and the type that we'll be focusing on, is the PowerPoint. However, you could also make a pre-recorded video, and some teams even just sit down and have a conversation with the judges. It's important to choose whatever works best for you. Since PowerPoints are the most common type of presentation in the chairman's room, you have to think about the format that you want to show the judges. There is your standards, like bullets, but you can also go into something a little bit more unique, like pictures and quotes. Whatever format you choose, we highly recommend that you use pictures, as they show judges happy people and people that love FIRST Robotics and love your team. You also have to think about what you want to tell the judges. Going back to the theme worksheet, you can also look at what you do. It's important to hit home the big things so that the judges remember your team. Speaking of the things you want the judges to remember, we recommend that you pick about 3 things that you really focus on. The judges are only going to remember 3, maybe 4 things per team, so it's important that you structure your presentation around this so that the judges remember the 3 things that you want them to remember. On your worksheet, when you actually write the presentation, there's also a spot for you to organize your content by the 3 main topics so that you have a balanced presentation that covers everything that you want to cover. In your worksheet, there's a couple lines of boxes and lines for you to write a basic presentation. While you're doing this, it's good to think about a broad script before you go into the details or the visuals. This broad script is pretty much where you're going to place what in the presentation. The first slide might be the intro. The second slide, introducing your theme. The third slide, this is the first part of my theme, and here's the first 3 things that I want to talk about. After you create the broad script, that's when you want to create the visuals, so you can tailor your more refined script to what you're showing the judges. When it comes to visuals, there's more than just pictures. There's also collages, even drawings that kids have made. Since pictures are the most common type of visual, there are a couple things you need to remember. In certain situations, it's okay to slightly modify or stage pictures. And I do emphasize slightly. When you stage pictures, make sure they accurately represent real events. Let's say you thought you got this great picture of a student on your team working with a little kid, but you realized your camera was off. It's okay to bring that little kid and that student back together. It's also okay to slightly modify, use a little bit of Photoshop. For example, in this picture, if you can see, there's a woman in the center top who's just kind of staring at the camera. It's okay to cover her up. You're not actually changing what the picture is telling the judges. Once you've decided on the basic visuals that you want to show the judges, it's time to refine your script. For chairmen, it's usually very heavily scripted, as you only have a maximum of 7 minutes, so every word counts. Make sure to include a little bit of why you chose that picture. Maybe only 1 sentence, but so the judges show why this picture is relevant to what you're telling them. Now, some teams choose to use the video in the presentation. We've presented chairmans about half a dozen times, and we've only used our video once. We used it because we couldn't figure out a better way to tell our story than how we told it in the story. Usually we recommend having people standing up and presenting your presentation because there's a bit of liveliness that you can't quite get from the video. But it's really up to you and whatever works for your team. You also have to think about what you bring into the room. Last year in our presentation, we had a cart with a television on which we showed our PowerPoint, and we also had a cart featuring our product line, which was a really big deal to us. Besides just any visuals you're going to show the judges, there's also things that you can give to judges. Last year, we gave them folders with lots of flyers and information about our team, as well as a copy of our business plan. We highly recommend that you give something to the judges so that they have a way to remember your team and look up more information about you. Whatever you use, make sure that it's easy to bring in and out of the room and you can set up in a very limited amount of time because your setup time may or may not count towards your chairman's time. Once you think you've finished running your presentation, it's important that you practice this and a lot. The more you practice, sometimes you'll tweak the wording, sometimes the amount of time you use is different, but you only have 5 to 7 minutes, and judges will cut you off. Some judges will choose to include the setup time in that and the introductions. Some won't, but it's important to be prepared for the setup time to be counted so that you don't get cut short. Now I'd like to open up the floor for any questions. Now it goes to Aria.
Alright, so now that you learned how to write and present your chairman's presentations, we're going to learn how to create your own video. Now when making a video, make sure to think about it more as a marketing, kind of like video that you could show to your sponsors or to your community, as most likely the judges will not see your video unless you win your competition. So So this is the process overview of what we're going to do of 10 steps to making your video. We recommend making this video kid-friendly, something that you could show to your sponsors, community, students, teachers, etc. The first thing you want to do is identify your direction. Now what we mean by direction is how is your style of the video going to be like. Is it going to be story time heavy, an interview based, a lot of animation, stuff like that. Another thing you want to make sure is that it has, this is how you relate it to like your theme. So it has to kind of like work with what you're trying to present and write. So something we like to think about is called CASP, content, audience, speaker, and purpose. These are the 5 things that we've included along with our worksheet that you can follow along or just think about. Content is obviously obvious, which is the stuff that you're going to put in your video. Stuff like how you've impacted via outreach or anything of that sort that you can relate to how you can show your community and to your sponsors throughout. Your audience is the people that you're going to show your video to. Now, like we had said before, this is your parents, judges, and teachers. Your speaker is kind of like the perspective you're going to do your video with. So are you making it as like an unbiased opinion? Is it under a parent's perspective, a student's perspective, or a mentor's perspective? And lastly, your purpose. Why you're making the video. Why are you making this video for your community? Are you making it for the judges? Or are you making it to show your students? Now, in your additional resources page that we've given you, there are going to be some following links that will help you find budget-friendly equipment that you can use to make your video. One misconception people think when making a video is that you need a big DSLR camera. Well, in this case, you don't really need one. A simple flip phone can work just as well as a DSLR when making your video. Another thing that a misconception is that you need some kind of heavy editing software or a full-on production company to make your video. These both don't need to be done, and you can even use a free, pre-installed in your computer, or even like Windows Movie Maker to make your videos. The fourth step when making your video is obviously acquiring the footage. We recommend starting off early as early as possible. That way you have a wide variety of shots, whether it's an outreach or how you present, or your team yourself building. Make sure to include videos. It's okay to use videos and photographs from other media sources. And another big thing that people don't realize is that you do need some kind of waiver or consent form when taking video or photos of a kid under 18. This is really important as you can get into serious legal issues in the future if you don't get the consent of the parent. You may have this really good outreach shot of your team member working with a small kid, but you can't use it unless you have some kind of consent form. We recommend using some kind of waiver form or a sign at wherever event you are. That way you can show to parents you'll get this consent form. So the fifth step is storyboarding. Storyboarding is kind of finding your pre-template of your video. Seen in your worksheet, we've given you 4 boxes so you can kind of start off how you're going to make it, whether it be visually of how each scene is going to go throughout, or the script of it, or how you're going to say different facts or quotes. Your storyboarding is kind of like each scene in your video, talking about a specific topic, or something that you've done, say a specific part of how you impacted the community, or how it relates to your theme, etc. The next step is writing the script. Now, your script can include voiceovers and scripted interviews. Make sure to collaborate the script with everyone in your team, especially those who are good at writing and good at editing. That way it makes a balance throughout the video. Make sure to also have some kind of unbiased opinion when doing this, as you don't want it to be heavily biased toward your team. Think of this as kind of like a chairman's essay, or very similar in that matter, when creating the script. The most important step, in my opinion, is editing, as it gives you the tone of the whole video. Editing only needs to be done between 2 to 3 people. We recommend it would be someone who wrote the script, an editor, and an unbiased opinion. Make sure that you have key footage showing your team that you want to exemplify, depending on what kind of direction you're trying to engage with your audience. We recommend starting with a lot of footage when you acquire footage and using the editing to go and get the important shots. One thing you have to realize when editing is that there are some important, you only can include 3 or 4 main points. Getting a lot of points is quite hard when making a short 3-minute video. And probably running music. Music is a big deal because it gives you the tone of your video. This is extremely important when you want your judges to appeal to a specific mood. They want to feel happy, inspired, motivated. Make sure to use royalty-free music, as it's important that you don't have any copyright claim or infringement. That way you don't get sued. I don't think anyone here wants to get sued because of their music. We have provided in the additional resources some good links that will help you get free royalty music. That way you don't have any copyright or legal issues. One thing that, a funny story that we had is a couple years ago, our chairman's video actually used copyrighted music. And because of that, we did get a copyright claim via social media. But thankfully, the music producer allowed us to use their music. This is not the case for every kind of situation, because you can get into really serious legal issues. So we recommend staying with royalty-free music. If you would like to use copyrighted music, make sure that you ask the consent of the music producer. And you're probably thinking, done? Done in the sense that we recommend going to other people and asking their opinion. Be right before you show it to the judges. Retired previous judges, mentors, students are great ways to see and cast their opinion before submitting the final. And your last step, congratulations, you finally completed your own chairman's video. But before making, submitting your final, make sure it's in the preferred file type. That way judges or anyone can see it either on a Mac or PC. The preferred file type for Mac and PC is MP4. This is straight from first chairman's manual of what they prefer when making your video, which is a 16:9 ratio, and it's not more than 3 minutes long. This is just a short clip of what we've done with storyboarding as a scene that we put in our last year's chairman's video. So if we have time later on in the presentation, I guess we'll show it to you guys for now. We're having some technical difficulties, but pretty much what I was trying to show is our creation of Wall STEM toolbox and how we implemented with the Girls First program to capture a whole scene for that. So does anyone have any questions?
How early in the process, before you actually submit the chairman for the deadline, should you start thinking about your theme and doing all of this prep
We
work?
recommend thinking about the theme probably, November would be the best time. And then getting your footage would probably be as soon as possible.
At the end of the presentation, we have a full timeline of approximately what you should be doing when.
Do we get to see your chairman's video?
And if we have time, yes.
If we have time at the end. So now you've written your essays, you've practiced your presentation, and you have your video. But you're not quite done yet. You still have to give the presentation to the judges. This is what will make or break your chances of winning chairmans. Giving your presentation is a little bit more complicated than you might think. There are a lot of things that you need to consider. Here are just a few of them. Now, what makes a good presentation team? That was not rhetorical.
People who work well together, or the
Yeah.
people who made the thing in the first place?
Mm-hmm.
They're confident in what they're saying.
Definitely. Some other things to consider about what makes a good presentation team is a variety of ages. Every 4 years, you get an entirely new team. Make sure that you have some different grade levels so that as people graduate, there's still people that have been in the room and can help your other presenters along the way. Another thing to consider is their expertise. Do the people presenting know about different areas of the team? That way, if you get a question on one of those areas during the judging process, you won't be able to say, I don't know. You can answer the judges' questions and give them the information that they want. Before you give your presentation, it's important that you practice in time. And yes, I know I talked about this a little bit earlier, but it's a very important step. Last year, we were right at the edge of 7 minutes. We had to keep cutting back information so that we could actually give our presentation in the allotted time. Again, make sure you think about getting your props into the room and setting up. If you have a computer that you can set up ahead of time, do it. If you can get things powered up, do it. Last year, in the bottom of the cart that held our TV, we had a big mobile battery. So that way we wouldn't have to worry about trying to find an outlet within the judges' room. Gotta practice with props. Last year, we had a cart that displayed our product line, and it was made of metal. Now on that, we also had a hollow metal can. During the presentation, we wanted to bring the can out and show it to the judges, except it kind of made a lot of noise. It took us a little while to get it down so that it wouldn't distract from the presentation. Also make sure that you practice with the visuals that you're going to be using. Sometimes technology doesn't work quite how you want it to. Also make sure you practice handing things out to judges. You don't want to be scrambling once you get into the room to figure out who's going to give what to the judges. You also have to practice with different audiences. What are some different audiences that you guys could present to in preparation for practicing to the judges?
The parents of the team.
Parents? Peers, definitely.
Teachers.
Exactly. You also think about doing school administrators or even retired judges. Present to as many different audiences as you can. This way your presenters are very comfortable presenting in front of anybody, and it'll help take away that nervousness on the day of the presentation. Now, you want your presentation team to look cohesive. What are some different things you could go into the room wearing?
Business suits?
Yeah?
Like a team polo.
Yeah? You also have your team shirts, which our friends in the back are graciously wearing. There's also another option that a lot of teams don't consider. You could also show up in costume. I know it sounds kind of weird, but a couple years ago, the team that won Chairman's actually came in dressed like flight attendants. Their whole theme was around flight and airplanes, and it worked. I mean, they won at World Championships, and that's a pretty big deal. We've talked a lot about the presentation and the essays in the video, but another crucial part of the chairman's process is answering the judges' questions. Depending on how much time you use for the presentation, you'll have 3 to 5 minutes. This goes back to why you want your presenters to have different areas of expertise. You want to be able to answer any possible question that the judges could ask. Make sure to practice with questions that you think the judges might ask, and even have a way to signal each other for who will answer what question. Expect the worst. I know it sounds daunting, but things get messed up a lot. You know what happened last year in the middle of our presentation?
Oh.
Yeah, that one kind of sucked. Thankfully, we practiced enough so that we could go on without our visual. We went on with our presentation. And I think we did pretty well. Stuff like this happens. We've had TVs break before we go into the room. We've gotten our blue screen of death. We've also forgotten things. Make sure that you can practice so that you're not relying on the things you have in the room with you, Because your brain is never going to break or, fall off the cart. You're going to have it with you, and be confident with that. Some things to think about before you actually give the presentation. Do you need an outlet? As I said before, you could get a portable battery that you could power computers and TVs off of. But something you want to think about so you have time to get it charged and to purchase it and get it delivered. The kind of things you'll give to the judges. What information do you want to tell them? There are a couple of different things that you can't win Chairman's without. You need to bring your video on a flash drive, and you also need to bring your media release form. If you don't give these to the judges when you walk into the room, you cannot win Chairman's. It's a really big deal breaker. It would suck to do all this work and then be disqualified because you forgot a flash drive. At some competitions, you'll be able to sign up for what time you're going to present. Others, you won't. Usually this happens the day before everybody gives their presentations. Make sure to figure out at what competitions you're going to, whether or not you'll be assigned a time, or whether you have to sign up for one. Now, the day you're going to give the presentation, it's finally here, you're almost done. It's a good idea to go find out where the room is. You don't want to get lost on the way and show up late, because that will cut into your presentation time. Scout out the layout of the room. It'll help when bringing your props in. If you do need an outlet, where are the outlets? How are you going to bring the card in? Will it fit through the door? Double check that you have everything you need. Your props, your handouts, your media release form, your flash drives. Those are all very important. You can get something set up like powering up a laptop or plugging a TV into a portable battery. Do so ahead of time. If your computer is really slow starting up, you don't want to have to wait in the room, wait for it to boot up, before you can actually start giving your presentation. In the chairman's room, you have the option of bringing in a fourth person as an observer. We tend to not do this because we feel it makes our presenters more nervous. However, it's a great way to provide feedback to your presenters afterwards. Make sure you think about this so at the last minute you're not scrambling. Whatever you choose, whether or not you bring an observer or not, is really up to you. But make sure that your presenters are comfortable with whatever decision is made. Here's the timeline I mentioned. In November, you want to start picking your theme. This will provide the basis for your entire submission. In December, you want to start drafting your essays. Now, the specific prompts are not announced each year, are not announced until kickoff each year. However, they stay fairly consistent. For the last 4 or 5 years, they've been the same, except last year, a 13th optional prompt for older teams was introduced. So it's easy to start drafting these essays ahead of time. In December, you also want to start storyboarding your video, because this will take a lot of time, and you want to make sure that you do that video right. In January, you want to be finishing up those essays. You want to start creating your presentation and continue to work on your video. In February, you want to finish all of your submission materials. These are your essays. Make sure you get them submitted on time. Contrary to what a lot of teams think, the submissions are not due on bag and tag day. They're actually due a couple weeks before, and they're not all due at the same time. So make sure that you check when they're due so that you don't forget to submit them and thus are not eligible to win the award. In February, as you're writing your presentation, it's important to decide what materials you want to give to the judges. As I said before, it's not required, but highly encouraged. Then you get to March and April. This is fairly straightforward. Practice your presentation and present your presentation. When it comes to competition season, you don't want to have to worry about getting your props or doing any last-minute things with the video. You want your presenters to be focused on just giving the best presentation they can. And after April, you're done. You only got a couple more months, so you got to do it all again. Now I'd like to open up the floor for any questions regarding this section or any of the previous sections. Yeah.
So doing chairman's is a pretty big undertaking, a big project. Does Walton have a separate sub-team for that? And what would you suggest for teams that aren't big enough to have a chairman sub-team?
During our competition season and build season, we generally have an awards team. We actually start getting members together in November because that's when we start getting your team. So, we have a awards kickoff. We actually had ours
2 days ago.
2 days ago. So, we invited anyone, just even thinking about joining awards, come on and share your ideas, start listing down some of the events we've done, just stuff like that. So we definitely have a few people just focus on awards and chairmen and any of the other awards missions that we're working on. So it would always be a wise idea, and in that group, you definitely want to have people who can work on video, who are great at presenting and writing, kind of everything. So then you're not like, oh, okay, you need someone to present. Oh no, you can present on the team. So you have at least all your group members together.
In terms of teams that aren't quite big enough, unless you have less than 5 people on your team is probably big enough. You really only need 3 people, and you could probably get away with 2. There will be a fairly heavy workload on these people, but if they get started far enough in advance, it shouldn't be too much of an issue. Anything else?
So what do you find changes from year to year besides the prompt for the essays? And, how much integration of cultural and social phenomena do you incorporate into your videos for, such as memes and all of those good things?
We tend to not go that route. Our presentations are usually very serious. However, there are teams that do silly stuff and win. It's really whatever works for your team, what you think represents you the best.
What works for us is kind of just being formal and kind of like just this presentation, pretty formal, straight to the point. There have definitely been some teams who do funny things and like little skits even, and that's not bad. We're not saying don't do that thing, but only if you and your mentors will execute like that.
How much of your presentation is reusable? So from the old one to the new one, if there's not a lot changing between your team from last year and this year, how much can you reuse?
It really depends on the team, because our team, for example, the 2 years before and last year, there was a significant difference. For example, we had a completely new product. Before we only had 1 product, and then the next year we had about 3 products. So we said, oh, okay, so we have 4 to 5 products now. We need to make a product line. So that was something new. And this year we expanded our Girls First program, so that's something new for this year. Some teams might not expand that much each year, so some of the information will be consistent. And you definitely want to include some history among your team. You usually do that. So of course, history is change, so that would be consistent. A lot of it is consistent. Sometimes you just include things that you've expanded on, because especially with older teams, they find themselves expanding more so than creating things.
There's also the question of whether or not you keep your theme. Each year we try to do a brand new theme. However, there are teams that keep with a fairly consistent theme every year. If the theme is more consistent, then it's going to be a lot easier to reuse some of the information, versus with a new theme, it's going to be a lot harder.
What is the biggest challenge of doing the chairman's video?
Probably the biggest challenge would be finding what shots you want to take and what shots you want to put in your video, because there's so many good ones. You have to tell yourself which ones you want to put in, and I guess going and shortening it down to just 3 minutes. I've had those moments where it's like 3 minutes 5, 3 minutes 6, but it has to be 3 minutes. Somehow you have to shorten it down. So that's probably the problem.
Yeah.
What exactly denotes the best shot for a video?
Probably the best shots are how you impact the team. So if you're like at an outreach event and you see one of your team members helping out a small little kid, that's like the perfect shot that you can show. Try to evoke emotion to the judges. So showing throughout your team or theme what you've done with your team. So yeah, get shots that you think you can evoke emotion to your judges, whatever you're trying to do.
Yeah.
So what combination of stills and voiceovers and music do you use in your video? Because some shots will have naturally good sound and words being spoken, but
So depending on the video, it really depends on what the team does for that video. I've known some teams have done just a scripted overview where they have a voiceover throughout multiple pictures of shots. Typically, when teams do this, what I've seen is that videos, sometimes the microphone will be the best, so that's why they do voiceover. Yeah, it depends really on the style, of how much animation you put, or how much story you put.
What do you guys think was the best thing about this year's like World Champion Chairman's video?
I think one of the best things was that somehow it really captured everything we talked about, like the essays and presentation. It really, hit all those points, and it didn't sound choppy. It sounded like it just flowed through like a pipeline, talking about some of the programs, product line, and stuff like that. That whole like flow that he sort of got while making it was pretty phenomenal.
Yeah, I'm gonna go ahead. Yeah, the last two. The previous years, I think, was my favorite by far.
That's the year where we used our video in our presentation. Because they were thinking now, saying, oh, how do we, this is such a video, how do we make a presentation on this? And then we're like, oh, just use the video presentation. And we can do that. So.
Sometimes teams also use video production companies to actually edit their videos. That's just something that you have an option of doing, so don't feel like
okay, that's
you have to
interesting.
edit your videos.
So this was our presentation from, this was part of our video from last year.
I don't know if they're going on AMX earlier. I think so.
Walton Robotics pioneered Girls First to motivate females to pursue STEM careers.
Check the AMX.
That's, yeah.
oh, it's plugged. It's not plugged in.
Oh, that would also help.
Yeah,
I probably didn't do that.
it's separate.
Did you guys do a session on Girls First at District Championship, I think?
They always do it.
Oh, it's not so good. What inspired Girls First?
Well, really, our whole reason behind Girls First is to inspire more young girls to go into STEM fields and careers. Because, there's a shortage of women overall in STEM fields. So, kind of a way to show them that STEM is
Do you wanna-
fun, you can work with all these cool things, and that it's not just for guys. And although a lot of women, are very strong leaders in STEM, they're just not. So we thought this could be a cool way, and this is just definitely a problem or an issue that you see quite often in most STEM fields. So, and we decided that, or we thought that if you kind of target younger girls and you build that mentality at a younger age, it'll be easier to do that, and also it'll carry forward as they grow up in school and as they get to high school and start thinking about what you truly want to college.
Let's try it. Okay, we are really having some technology troubles today.
I blame the internet.
100%. We are much more than a collection of facts. We are redefining
Walton
what it
Robotics
means to be a
pioneered Girls
leader
First to
within
motivate
FIRST.
females to pursue STEM careers. Under Girls First, the team created
Walton
outreach
Robotics is fearless in setting its ambitious and far-reaching goals and consistently achieving them. We are working to get a robotics program in every school, get state funding for robotics at every level, and get a robot at the Super Bowl. We've created a 19,000 square foot regional robotics hub and are kicking off our international STEM outreach program in Brazil.
Okay.
Aerospace engineering and one day into space. I am fearless and I am first.
Yeah.
Different,
Let's. Okay.
You got it this time.
Okay.
Oh, it's L.
Here's pull up Slack. Or actually, you got it?
Yeah, I got it. It was an L, not an I.
Okay, let's try this again.
I
It's a different
believe.
Under Girls First,
I have
the
it
team
open
created
here.
Outreach
Do
in
you
the
wanna-
Box, an
And
interactive,
it's killed.
creative,
It's
aerodynamics-based
killed.
activity to show girls that STEM is fun and interesting. Each box is created with easily renewable materials so that teams can use them autonomously and continue
I'm
to
about to fix this right
exponentially
now.
expand our
Which one?
impact. After its success, we expanded our line of outreach activities and united them under one name, Walt's STEM Toolbox. The toolbox includes 4 products: Outreach in a Box Earhart, Outreach in a Box Curie, Walt's Storybook, and Camp in a Can. With Walt's STEM Toolbox, we have reached thousands of girls through distribution to community organizations, corporate sponsors, and other first teams.
So there was this one, and then there's also.
Is that more to that video?
Okay. It was,
That was just a snippet.
I was just talking about our product line. Yeah.
Hold on, I gotta bring this guy over. This one was 2 years ago.
This is the whole one?
Yes.
Yes, this is the whole one. So this one's actually
It's
my.
exactly 3 minutes.
Different one.
Yeah, this one was last year's. This is actually my personal favorite.
We are much more than a collection of facts. We are redefining what it means to be a leader within FIRST.
Walton Robotics is fearless in setting its ambitious and far-reaching goals and consistently achieving them. We are working to get a robotics program in every school, get state funding for robotics at every level, and get a robot at the Super Bowl. We've created a 19,000 square foot regional robotics hub and are kicking off our international STEM outreach program in Brazil. I'm going to use what I have learned to study aerospace engineering and will one day make it to space. I am fearless and I am first.
With over 50 annual outreach events, Walton Robotics has inspired over 8 million people in the last 5 years, driving culture change in our community and the world. We demonstrate at local schools, sponsor events, and statewide and national conferences. Our t-shirt cannon has been featured on CBS, ESPN, and even the NFL, showing the connection between sports and technology. We've recently expanded into music and gaming through our innovative orchestra conducting robot and a series of STEM video games. I aimed to pursue a career in robotics surgery. I am inspired, and I am first.
Walton Robotics is the face of FIRST. As a recognized leader, we represent FIRST in media, at regional and national events, and in front of educators and legislators. Our outreach activities and business plan are replicated by teams across the globe. Walton Robotics has given me the skills that I need to be a leader in my career. Public speaking, strategy, and chain of command are just a few of these. With what I've learned from Walton Robotics, I can make an impact on the future. I am a role model, and I am first.
Only a life lived for others is a life worth living. This is the motto that our team embodies. Everything the Walton Robotics team does benefits the FIRST community.
Through Destination Einstein, we've hosted 45 teams at 30 events in the past 30 months.
We cultivate the growth of existing teams and accelerate the development of new teams around the world through mentorship, sponsorship, and trainings. I will bring STEM education to underprivileged regions around the world and nurture my passions by sharing them. I am selfless, and I am first.
Walton Robotics is pioneering the new model of FIRST for the next 25 years. We are actively inspiring others, embracing the changes as they happen, and achieving our visions for the future. Our team is breaking down barriers and uniting the spirits of over 8 million people. Our team is a driving force in forming the next generation of FIRST. We are fearless, inspired, role models, selfless, and tomorrow. We are Walton Robotics.
And we are FIRST.
Thank you. This one was actually the one with the copyright claim.
some beautiful piano music.
Yeah.
Would you suggest that we like make our own acronym first, other than
Your own what, sorry?
acronym first? Cause like,
Like what we did in the video. You definitely could. I honestly don't know how that one kind of started, but there's no reason why not. I mean, if you feel that it works for your team, then that's something idea that you can cut.
You just want to remember, your theme is unique to you. So this was a theme for Holger. That video is actually the only time we've ever used our video in the presentation. This video was a very big deal for our team. If it really speaks to your team and it really embodies your team, then I guess you could. But just make sure that it's unique to you.
Have you heard examples of bad themes?
No theme, I think, is the worst thing. There's no way to tie it all together, to connect it, to make judges remember you from your essays, assuming they remember them. They go through a lot of essays. They won't remember everything. Through your video and your presentation.
There's not really a bad. I don't think there's a really bad theme because your theme is whatever works. The only bad theme is no theme.
I think that video was so successful because it was very personal and it spoke both on a team level as well as a very personal level. And I think that tends to make for the most successful video. Ones that are either all real big or all real small, just focusing on individuals don't work. It kind of gave it a nice, interesting context as well as spoke personally to the audience.
Well, thank you guys for coming. If you have any more questions, feel free to contact us at waltonrobotics.org.
Let's give Walton a round of applause. Cool, and like I said earlier in this presentation, all the stuff that we went through today and all of the papers and this presentation will be online and sent out in an email to the TE list. If for some reason you're here and not on that, let us know afterwards and we can get you on that so you can get this material. You will also be able to find an archive of this video on our YouTube channel after the live stream. And again, we'll have our last TE session next week, closing it all out with the strategy and scouting session. Brady will be presenting it same time, same place, November 19th. So yeah, thank you all for coming.